Hey, thanks everybody for joining our webinar today. Optimize AI and automation for project success. First thing we're going to do is go through a little bit of housekeeping. We would like everyone to remain muted. We had several hundred people sign up. Looks like there's a few hundred on, so that would be great. We are encouraging folks to ask questions, but we will hold that the Q&A for the feedback at the end. But you can post questions to the chat as well. This is going to be recorded, so make sure that you're okay with being recorded if there are any of your chats or anything, because it is going to be distributed. Somebody asked a few minutes ago. Everybody's usually interested in seeing the content afterwards. This is proprietary information, copyrighted. Okay, let's dive right into it. So here's your presenters. I'm the guy on the right over there, and with me is Brian Quick.
Hey everybody, really excited to be here today.
Brian is on the end of doing about 4 or 5 demos this morning, and day after day after day of demos. So he, I think I'm going to be doing more of the talking. He's going to be doing the demoing here in a few minutes. So we'll move forward that way. So, all right. So a little bit about Innovative E. We don't talk too much, but we were the 2023 Partner of the Year award winner. We've actually won several awards with Microsoft in the PPM and customer experience space. I think 6 over the last 5 years or so. So they seem to, we have a really good working relationship with all kinds of folks at Microsoft, with the product team, engineering teams, the product marketing teams, support teams, all those folks. So we work very closely together to help deliver the best solutions possible for our joint customers. So we're going to open up with a poll. So this is going to be a little bit interactive. We only have 2 of them today. So I think Pamela's going to open up a poll, and we'd like for you guys to kind of talk about or answer the question as related to project and work management outcomes in your organization. What best describes, per this question, our projects, our initiatives are on time, on budget, in scope, and create the value anticipated this percentage of the time? So what percentage of the time do you feel kind of everything is quote unquote perfect with the way your projects or initiatives? And I say initiatives because it could be a software development or a work management type of thing that's not necessarily considered a project, because we're getting into the age of a lot of different things are happening in organizations. So do go ahead and submit your responses, and we'll kind of see where that is headed. And I am not seeing the results yet. Are you seeing those by chance, Brian?
Yes, I am.
Okay. How's it looking?
It's a horse race here between the 50 to 74% and the less than 50%. So right now what I'm seeing is that folks are saying that about 19% of you are saying that 75 to 100% of your projects are on time, on budget, in scope, and create the value anticipated. About 48% of you are saying that 50 to 74% of the time that's the case. About 30% of you are saying that that's the case less than 50% of the time. And 2% of you have no idea.
Which, that's fair. Might not have the visibility into it, which is perfectly fine, right? All right. So I think we will close the poll and go forward with what the experts are saying. And some people may have seen this before, but this group is doing a little better than what the experts have said. According to a recent poll from the Standish Group out of this How AI Will Transform Project Management HBR article earlier this year, there were about $48 trillion spent on projects per year. That's a staggering number if you think about it. That is just a huge number. But only about 35% are considered successful. So our group here, we have some really good project managers and program managers on the call, I guess. So it looks like we're trending a little above that, but there's still an awful lot that wasn't really thinking that wasn't there. What that blow it out top category of 75 to 100% was a smaller number. So I think that's
right.
kind of tracking a little bit with what the experts are saying here. Interestingly enough, though, we've been doing this for a long time. This number hasn't moved much in probably 30 plus years. It's probably been between like 25 and 35% if you go back many years and say, these projects, what percentage are really, perfectly successful in terms of delivering what they wanted, the value and everything else. So that's kind of interesting that hasn't really moved, right, Brian?
Yeah, it's fundamentally, just mind blowing, as it says. I mean, like, if you think about it, all the things we have at our disposal to manage projects and all the methodologies and different tools, and we haven't really moved the needle.
Right. I mean, 30 years ago, we had like Project 1.0 on or 2.0 on DOS or Windows, or there weren't a lot of heavy duty project management apps, at least not available to, the consumer. There were some high end, mainframe type things that were available back then. So let's move on to question number 2. I told you it was going to be participate. I can't say the word. We're going to ask you to participate. So as related to the projects and work that are managed in your organization, which describes your situation per this question. All our projects, so all the projects and all the work that you have going on are managed using one methodology or process and a single tool set, a few methodologies and processes, or in a few tool sets. Some departments have methodologies and tool sets, but many do not, or there's no real standardization. It's just the Wild West, right? So, kind of what's going on as you understand it within your organization. So, how's it looking there, Brian? Is it a horse race again?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, seeing how this is playing out. I think there's a couple of there's only 76 responses in, so I'm interested in kind of seeing how this plays out. But now we have about 91. Um, the the biggest one is a few methodologies, processes, and a few tool sets, and then that's 56% so far with 102 responses in now.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one in the horse race is really some departments have methodologies and tool sets, but many do not. And that's tracking at about 24% right now.
Right. Okay. Yep. And I see that there's no real standardization. There's a little bit there as well as, and both also the one methodology and tool set. Interesting. So thanks everybody for participating. That's all we're going to ask you to do, but we do want you to continue to stay engaged. That's the last question, but you can continue to ask questions. And again, we will have a Q&A at the end. So we'll close the poll and move forward. So what we did here is we said, kind of what Brian was saying before. 30 years ago, there wasn't a lot of technology and a lot of processes. There was, your basic waterfall and project management. The PMI had been established back in the 60s, so Project Management Institute and PMBOK, I think, was around probably version 1 back then, or version 2. So it's gone through a lot of iterations. But in the meantime, man, has there been a proliferation of technology, right? There's all these tools, right, Brian? You got all these
Yeah, oh my
office tools, which
gosh.
are used a lot for project management, the traditional project, Microsoft Project Planner, Smartsheet, all of your kind of agile tools, your Azure DevOps, your Jiras, and then the born in the cloud solutions, which have happened, really popped up over the last 10 years with the prevalence of, the cloud computing era and everything coming up. So these born in the cloud solutions. So just all kinds of stuff. And there's a bunch more, right? I mean, there's a bunch more that are out there. In the
Yeah,
meantime, there's also a lot of methodologies, and we just grabbed a couple of 3 here. There's the traditional waterfall, there's agile, which and there's kind of the Kanban, there's value stream management. There's all these things, and people get really serious about their ideologues, right, about one methodology or the other. And
mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's been some very heated debates over these things over the years, but it's a different way to address some of the problems that the technology hasn't been able to solve. So people have developed these new ways of trying to manage work that better align to these different kinds of things and challenges they're trying to do. So we're really talking about the tools, the tech, the processes, and then the people here with the training adoption. So again, you have like Project Management Institute came up in the 60s. You have all kinds of university sponsored programs. When we were at PMI, Georgia Tech College for Project Management was in the booth right next to us. That was great. We even had Buzz, their mascot, come into our booth, which was kind of fun. And then you have also you have help desk support and adoption systems and everything else that are in place within organizations that are adopting project and work management systems, right? So you have all this stuff that has grown up and all this investment in trying to make these projects more successful and deliver more value to the organization. And yet, again, just a reminder, the success rate really hasn't moved that much. Why? Why hasn't it moved? So we'll get back to that in a minute. So having said that, people keep adding these new technologies and they keep adding these new things, and they all work, right? I mean, it's not that any of them are necessarily bad. I mean, people can argue between the methodologies or when they like one tool better than another, but it's not like they're all don't do what they're designed to do and what they say they'll do. But yet people keep trying, right? They'll ditch one tool and go get another. They'll, try a new methodology and try to go back to the one they had. And so I put this quote up, and it's well known quote about insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And of course, everybody knows that's Albert Einstein, right? Actually, it's not. This is just a trivia for everybody. I went to check this out. It actually is attributed to Rita Mae Brown in her book Sudden Death in 1983. And it's actually, if you doubt me, there's the source. It's Google Arts and Culture there. So just a fun
Mike, if all
fact for
those
everybody.
tools actually solved the problem, then they wouldn't keep making more tools, right?
Exactly. And trying new and variations of technologies
Yeah,
or methodologies, right? So now, that argument between kind of waterfall and Waggle and Agile and Scrum and all these different things is now coming into the adaptive project management and all that, and it all is good, but it's not solving the fundamental problems, right?
right. It's actually making it worse.
In some ways, yeah, absolutely, because now you're creating more data sets and more different places for people to collaborate. So it's pulling kind
Right.
of people apart. So we'll get more to that point here in a minute. So let's take a quick look into the future. This is another. This is from a Gartner article, and I believe February this year as well. And it says that 80% of project management tasks will be run by AI in 2030. That's 4 years, right? 4 years and a month and a half. um, I mean, 4 years, 6 years. Sorry. But that's not very far in the future, right? Right, Brian? I mean, this is kind of crazy to think that all this automation is going to happen.
Wow. It's something that you really think about. Like if your job is basically duct taping and super gluing data together in a spreadsheet, and that's what you do all day, then it's time to start thinking about doing things a little bit different.
Right, right. And I know there's a lot of concern about AI replacing people and things like that. And if that is what you're doing, your primary piece of
Yeah.
project management is chasing data, um, I think that's what, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes of how we see it and what we're doing in the space and what we see other folks doing. But the interesting juxtaposition of this is other folks, and this was actually from a PMI article a couple of years ago, but I think it's still valid. They believe that there's going to be 25 million new project professionals, project coordinators, project managers, et cetera, and over 102 million new project jobs. So if you're going to be automating all these tasks, and yet there's going to be all these new people required, I mean, what gives, right? I mean, how do you how do you rationalize that? So
Like despite the automation, they
right,
need a net new 25 million project managers, despite the automation. That's crazy.
yeah. I think what it means is the roles are going to change. But we'll talk more about that in a minute,
Yeah.
right?
Well, let's get real for a minute, Mike.
Yeah,
We saw it in the polls. People are just going to use different tools to manage projects and work. So this
mm-hmm,
isn't about finding another tool that's going to do it all.
right,
Um, we need to start putting collaboration first and in the center of everything. Because the real problem that we're having is not that your tools are incapable. It's that
exactly,
the real problem that we're having is disconnected people, disconnected applications, and disconnected data.
right,
So we need to reduce the distance between the work and the tools that govern it. You guys are living this every day. You're living this. You're spending so much time chasing data around and that is not really what you were hired to do. Um, you're not there to fill the data gap between what management needs to learn and what is being reported on for project task level at a project task level. You're not there to figure out what the percent complete of something is. You're there to manage the charter of the project. You're there to get the value to market as soon as you can, if that's your type of organization, or you're there to provide benefits, quality of life benefits to people in your institution as quickly as you can. You're there to adhere to budget, manage risk, manage issues, manage stakeholders and sponsors. And what we're doing all day is we're aggregating data, we're chasing people around, trying to figure out what the status of it is, and you're spending an inordinate amount of time creating manual status reports week after week and trying to tell your story. So if we're able to find the right way to reduce the distance between the work and the data that represents it, that's how we're finally going to solve these problems.
Yeah, I love the way you summed it up at the end. You may have been about to say this, but when we gave the presentation a couple weeks ago on the main stage at PMI in the exhibit hall, we had, I don't know, 400 or 500 people there. It was very well attended. A lot of people came up after. But what you said at the end of that is your job as a project manager is to lead and make
Yeah,
these projects successful and do the things that humans can do best, disambiguate requirements, work with stakeholders, solve resolution of conflict, identify the issues, the risk, all the things you talked about. It's to lead, right? And
yeah,
that's what's going to happen with those new jobs that are going to be created. And the era of chasing data and doing all these things that are required is coming to a close, and that is
yeah,
awesome. So long as you embrace it and you can move forward with it, right?
right. And if you want to be part of that trend, you want your organization to be part of that trend, we need to have hard conversations about where your data lives.
Absolutely. So let's do a quick review of kind of what we've done so far in the last 20 minutes or so. So we've talked about the challenges, right? We've got many different tools, methods, and adoption things and learnings and everything that are being applied. Success rates remain elusive, right? But we are in the age of AI and automation, and it is evolving rapidly for project management. And then more project managers and people working in projects are going to be required, but they're going to be doing new kinds of work, right? And that's a real takeaway there. So, what are the solutions? We promised that we would talk a little bit about how you get there, and we're going to do that. And then we're going to show how we're approaching it here in a few minutes. But the first thing to do is really think about putting the building blocks in place. And we've talked about this, and Brian mentioned a few minutes ago the disconnected people, apps, and data. Bring them together on a common, secure, modern platform. And for us, being a Microsoft partner, that is what we're doing, and we have embraced this. And we really see, and I said this to people, dozens of people I talked to, had some great conversations, some really good questions and things at the conference and our booth and on the floor. I said it's so exciting to be able to start addressing some of these problems that we've never been able to solve collectively. I say we, I mean the project management community. I did project
Yeah,
management for years. You did project management for years. I'm certified in PMP for many years. You're a PMP and done Scrum Master and everything else. But some of these problems have remained elusive for all of us. But by bringing the data together in a secure platform, we're able to start addressing this in a new way. And I think that's what's really fun about this. We're in the era of finally moving some of these things and maybe moving that needle a little bit and making the project management job more fun, right? I think
yeah,
that's really what's going to
more
happen,
meaningful. Yeah,
more meaningful. And project teams, I think, because we're going to be able to, what we're really going after is being able to work on the execution component or execution phase of project management much better. And the other phases to a greater or lesser extent. But by having the right kind of data, it's actually going to make we're seeing project teams feel more satisfied in their jobs too, because there's not unrealistic expectations around why can't you get this done? Well, I can't give you the data or if I got to go get all the data to tell you why everybody's overloaded or, there's just too much work to do or there's too much conflicting priorities on skills or whatever. Then it's just not it's not fun. so so the
yeah,
second piece here, I took a digression there, but I think that's really an aspirational goal that I think we're all chasing is to make everybody's life a little bit better. The other piece is to really embrace an evolutionary approach that enhances the legacy apps while leveraging modern apps to democratize the work and project management. And that's a mouthful, right? So let me break that down a little bit. So when we talk about embracing an evolutionary approach, the legacy apps that are out there, and we're talking about things like Microsoft Project, right, and Planner, and some of these that are still available. These things have been used for a long time. Project Server, Project Online, Project Desktop. There's still a whole lot of that out there. These aren't going to go away overnight, right? And Microsoft understands that. So by embracing the idea that you can continue to use that until you can start to modernize your whole project management experience for everyone, That's a very important point, right? But then, Brian, we're also talking about leveraging the modern apps to be able to democratize work and project management as well. And I think you may show just a glimpse into that in a few minutes, but that's a pretty exciting part too, right? About being able to not just include those pockets of people that may be in the PMO or IT or engineering that have traditionally done all the project, but everyone in the organization, right?
Yeah, and we're not here to talk to you about using another tool. We're here to talk to you about leveraging what you have today, and bringing that into a collaborative space so that you're able to centralize the data and you're able to use AI on that data in the way that you want, in the way that you envision. If your data is proliferated, and segmented across various tools, and you don't have the opportunity to bring it in to a common space, then you're going to struggle with being able to get past the manual activities that you're doing today, in order to tell your story and to communicate to management about what's happening in your project, to herd your cats on your project team. But to the extent that we can talk to you about how to pull it all together, that's when this becomes possible.
Yep, and everybody can, at some point, everyone will have the opportunity to manage work in a way that can be consolidated, right? So what ends up happening is you end up having vast parts of your information worker workforce who don't have the right tools or technologies, or at least disparate ones that we're talking about. They're using different things, so you can't pull that information together to
Mhm.
see kind of a more holistic view, which is very powerful, and especially if you're talking about things like optimizing the enterprise experience or optimizing enterprise performance in your project and work management. You've got to
Yeah.
be able to, at some point, be able to tie that back to things like strategic goals, right? And OKRs and things like
Mm.
that. So it's important to be able to start pulling that stuff together for lots of reasons.
Yep.
So we had this question a lot. So I actually built this slide after PMI Global, because a lot of people were walking up and saying, okay, we had a 15-minute presentation, so we couldn't go real into much. So they're asking, so what can AI do that's going to increase value, and what kind of things are happening? What are you talking about? That 80% automation of AI things. So this isn't a deep dive because we assume our audience here is mostly project managers. We can have deeper dives into the technology. I've referenced some technology here, but our design goal with our product, which Brian's going to show in a minute, has been really to reduce the project manager and team members' work while increasing value. So it's about that whole thing about reducing the distance between the work and the systems that govern it. So how are we doing that? So a few things that we've tackled is one of them is determining the team sentiment. So like a sentiment analysis of how the team is feeling about the project. And what this does is it mines things like the team chat ongoing thread. And when we use those extensively with our customers, and we know a lot of customers in the management of their products, there's an ongoing dialogue that goes for days, weeks, whatever, however long the project goes. So there's a lot of information there. What we're doing is we're using, it's a little technical here, but it's Microsoft's AI cognitive services. So Azure AI is the product suite, which is in addition to the Microsoft Power Platform and Modern Work Platform. So it really it allows you to kind of read those things and do positivity scoring, and without any input, no additional data. Project managers, team members don't have to go update a task or say they feel this way or update a KPI. It just reads it. This is what AI can do. It can read it and it can analyze it, and it can tell you and give you a score. And I think you may show that in a few minutes. So that's using Azure Cognitive Services and Azure Logic Apps. The other thing that we've got, and this is will be out shortly, probably around the end of the year, is we're reading meeting transcripts. So we're identifying possible issues and risk. We're surfacing those to the project manager. They get a card right after the end of a meeting, a status meeting, and they can automatically create an issue or a risk. And if they accept it, or they annotate it or make the changes or whatever, it'll automatically be populated, just a couple clicks, and now you're updating your risk registry or your issue log or whatever, right, Brian? So that makes it really cool. That's what you said this a bunch of times. One of the biggest challenges to project management is not doing risk management well, right?
Oh my gosh, I'm really hot in risk management. So let me just tell you, it's a passion area of mine. I felt in my, experience with project management, when I was coming into it, it was, um, the risks were out of control, on a lot of the projects I was managing. And people didn't even refer to them as risks. They just called them issues. There was no analysis of, you know, how bad is this potentially, or what's the impact of it, or what's the probability it's going to happen. And so what you can just get bogged down in like a mire of these conversations because anybody can just say, well, I don't want to do this because this might happen.
Right.
Well,
Right.
and your project can completely stall as a result. And so it's extremely important to not be able to identify risks and make that a team effort. Tell your
Mm-hmm.
team, talk to your team about it. It's a team effort to identify the risk. You're not, as the project manager, you are not the expert on the subject matter. So you have to have your team, things forward and feel like they're able to do that without risk to them, like, or without being a naysayer, or, that it's a safe environment, and be able to categorize those things, log them, analyze them, and then take action if necessary. One of the real liberating things about risk management is you don't have to do something about every risk. If it's low probability, low impact, you can just move on, choose not
Yep.
to respond. And that's sometimes the best thing, because otherwise everybody wants you to stop.
Mm-hmm. And then the way you started to set up that scenario, which was great, you said, you have these conversations, and then the conversations don't necessarily get formalized into formal risk management because they don't necessarily get put into a
Yeah,
risk log, right? And that's what this feature is supposed to do. It's supposed to take
right.
away the emotion on that, automatically allow the project manager to create that risk or issue, and then do something with it. Because if they don't get logged and you're
Yeah,
not doing that programmatically, then you're not following a process that everybody's agreed to, and then it just kind of goes into those conversations, right? Just devolves.
yeah, that's going to
So
be great. I mean, amazing to be able to reduce the distance between the work that's happening, the identification of that risk, and the data, because now it'll just suggest that a risk be logged and flow into the data and flow into the reporting. It's amazing. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about.
yep. And there's so much more you can do. There's automated status reports. There's things like that. Now, a lot of you guys will see stuff about generative AI. We are using generative AI in this. It says Chat GPT in there. But one of the things we're not doing yet is just putting in like a chatbot that allows you to tap into GPT and say, identify everything that could, where I may be able to improve this project, and tapping on an open data set and maybe a private data set. And because what that does is that generates pages of anybody who's used like ChatGPT or any of those. And we don't know that how helpful that can be. It actually can create work. So we're trying to avoid creating more work for project managers. So we're trying to be very intentional about the application of AI. So we
Yeah,
kind of keep that in mind in our what we're talking about here.
we're trying to
So
reduce that overhead to zero, right, Mike? And that's the ultimate goal.
exactly. And there's so much more you can do. We have a list a mile long, and everybody will come up with their own ways to do things too. So that's going to lead us to this next point, which is really, really important for everybody to kind of understand. The platform tools and talent is becoming ubiquitous. And what I mean by that is, if you're on a Microsoft shop, if or your company's Microsoft based, the tools you already have probably M365. You have, and that's going to include a lot of things. I'm going to throw out some technical terms like the Dataverse. You're going to have Azure. You're going to have some components. You're going to have Power Apps if it's turned on, and you have some additional licensure and things like that. The AI components, those are upcharges, but they're included. So the talent set is also growing rapidly for those who've been around a while and seen the evolution of like the Microsoft platform going back to like .NET, C Sharp, and then moving into things like SharePoint and things like that. The talent sets rose rapidly as the usage became more ubiquitous. The individual companies started investing in training in their people. That's happening in droves right now for Power Automate. It's a low code, no code platform, or a low code pro code as they call it. So it can really accelerate the process of automation. And as it becomes more ubiquitous, it's not just about buying AI solutions and automation. You can do it yourself. And so that's a really important point. So if you already have Microsoft, the Azure Dataverse, which is kind of the data sets behind it, and we can go into more detail if anybody's interested, and Azure, the Microsoft Power Platform, Azure AI, and OpenAI, those tools are available to you, your team, or third parties if you wanted to get other partners involved. There's a very rapidly growing ecosystem. Microsoft has 400,000 partners, probably a couple 100,000 of them do. Power Apps and Azure-based services and things like that. So the talent set to go build your own AI on this is rapidly growing, and that's an important piece. It's like, how do I do this? Well, you can go get yourself trained up on it. You can engage partners. It's a wide variety of ways you can take advantage of this. So that's important to know.
Just one thought there, Mike. ChatGPT is really cool.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
We use it. We use it all the time to help us write blog posts or create a document, kind of get you started on things, and the way that you can tailor the output is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's really not what we're talking about here, though. We're not talking about the public ChatGPT stuff. We're talking about your data in your environment and the endless potential for you to learn from that data. Your data is a wealth of information, in and of itself. And so if we're able to centralize it, we're able to put it all together in one place, then and provide this tool set, this platform that allows you to work with it, to expose it to AI and create amazing results from it. That's what we're
Yep.
talking about. It's private, it's secure, it's your own. If you're not using ChatGPT to cut corners and to streamline your day-to-day activities, you should be. That's table stakes right now.
Right, absolutely. Now, to go further on that, and I meant to put this in there, you reminded me of a very good point, though. Make sure that you're understanding where your data resides when you start to build AI, and
Right.
make sure that you're not putting data into the open ecosystem market that's out there. So, ChatGPT
Right.
will have some disclaimers about that. Things that are available on the internet, obviously, are not good. Microsoft has a really robust responsible AI program, and they've put some policies in place, and they're putting some procedures around ways to do things like ensuring that private information, IP, things like that, aren't exposed through your private data set that is in your.
Right.
And I know everybody's. You've got your. If you're in the cloud, Microsoft, you have your own what's called Microsoft tenant or client. That is different than the public domain stuff, and it is firewalled. And your IT folks they'll know all
Mm-hmm.
about that. So the responsible AI makes sure one of the tenets of it is that data doesn't cross boundaries where it's not supposed to. So that's a
Right.
very important piece of understanding. We follow the Microsoft responsible AI principles to the letter to make sure that we're doing that stuff as well. So
Right.
all right. So next we have let's move on forward here. And I think what we're going to get into is a little bit of a discussion about the product, right, Brian? So we're going to talk about the architecture. So this is really we've talked about kind of how we leverage Teams for PM, which is our product, how it leverages the Power Platform and AI and the other work management tools. So you can kind of see there, it's a multi-stack kind of thing is the best way to represent this. So what our application does is it uses the Power Platform and all the Dataverse and all those components, and it moves the data as necessary from other work management tools in and out of it. One important thing, again, following the design, not just the AI data principles, but just good data infosec security principles. We maintain everything stays inside your client tenant. We don't move data outside of that. And that's an important distinction when we talk about disconnected data. Some of these third-party dayoftheweek.com things, your data is actually leaving your tenant. It's residing out in their environment. So that's important to think about as well. So if you keep it in your tenant, we do things with it in your tenant. You can do things with it in your tenant, and it remains secure. And the whole thing, again, what we've talked about is it's about removing these long-standing obstacles of disconnecting people, data, and apps, and leveraging the modern platform on your legacy apps and the modern apps. And that's important to know that you can do it on both, that you don't have to flip a switch. You can keep the legacy pieces in place and continue to manage using things like Project Online, while starting to look at these modern platforms capabilities as well. So it's all about managing projects in the flow of work, right, Brian?
It is. So that's what we're talking about here is being able to leverage tools that you are probably already using today, namely Microsoft Teams. And some of you are on different journeys with Microsoft Teams or different points of that journey. But we know that 90% of the Fortune 500 is using Teams.
Yep.
We know that 300 million people on this planet are using it.
Right.
So
More.
even more than that. So basically, that's what we're talking about doing here is bringing your project management collaboration into the collaborative space that you're already using, so that we're able to amplify that and then capture data in the course of doing so. So
Yep.
wouldn't it be great if you could if you could just use Teams
Yep.
and capture that data so that you're able to report on it and stop chasing it around?
Yep. So we have some folks asking for some if they can get a demo. This is perfect timing.
Perfect. How about that? How about that? So let me go ahead and share
Okay,
my
I'm going to
screen
stop share.
now.
And Brian's going to take over the screen share.
Okay. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that I am in Microsoft Teams, and somebody on a recent demo said, you know what? I can't really tell where Teams for PM starts and Teams stops. And, I think that's purposeful. I mean, we're really not trying to build a different user experience into this. It's really intended to be using Teams for the purposes of project management in a meaningful way, in a governed way, and an automated way. We're not trying to create a different UI or create our own way of visualizing things in Teams. So it's just going to look and feel like Microsoft Teams, and I think that's the point. Um, we're kind of hot on not creating another tool that's going to do this stuff, but leveraging existing tools that you already have. And we know y'all are using Microsoft Teams all the time. So when you come into this construct, what we've created here is a channel for every project that we're working on, and we've put those under program headings, and those are the teams. Now that's an option, doesn't have to be that way, but that seemed to be a logical way to organize our demo environment. We have our programs and we have our channels. Those are our projects. Within each one of those project channels, I have different tabs that I can use for collecting various data that I need in order to manage my project, helping people visualize it, and providing a one-stop shop for people to collaborate. When I'm in Teams and I'm in my channel, I have, of course, my posts. This is where people are collaborating all the time with each other, replying threads, receiving activity notifications about the collaboration that's happening. Pulling all that collaboration into Microsoft Teams and out of email makes a ton of sense. We, of course, have our file repository where we have our project templates, maybe a hierarchy of documents, artifacts, and things that we're creating or collaborating with each other on. And now we're doing that in Teams so that you're using co-authoring, you're not emailing things around, you're not storing things in a file server somewhere and nobody can find them. You're not emailing different versions of stuff around either. And then you got your good old projects. Now, we do provide 3 options for how to manage this schedule. So as we said before, we're not trying to create another scheduling tool. We did not do that. We are leveraging the Microsoft options for scheduling, and this is Project for the Web. It's like an upgrade from Planner. And what you're able to do there is you have a grid, a WBS. You have the ability to assign tasks to people within your company that are related to this project. You're able to visualize those things in a grid view like here and have a hierarchy. You're able to add your own columns and move your columns around. So it's actually quite flexible and easy to use. You want to mark something as complete, you just check the box. Now your team members can come in here and mark something as complete also. Also have a board view, and that can be sprint planning, it can be progress board, it can be different categories and labels. And you have a timeline view. So this is your Gantt chart traditionally, but this is not your average Gantt chart. You can actually interact with it directly. You can create dependencies by dragging and dropping one thing to another. And you can even look at filtering for critical path. But what makes this awesome inside of Microsoft Teams, yeah, it's fully capable. It does a lot of the things that you're looking for project management in a tool. But you can also have a conversation alongside of it, and it's inline discussion in Microsoft Teams. You can do that on a project level, but what's really cool is you can do it on a task level. So you can have a conversation about this task with whoever it is you need to talk to. That's really creating a streamlined way to interact, to figure out what's happening with these tasks, to get a status update, to collaborate on the actual task itself. And in doing so, you're basically creating data. That data that you're creating is going into the posts area, and your team is collaborating on that stuff all the time.
Yep.
What's awesome about the ability and the potential here, guys, is that you can point AI at that data, because this is the designated official Teams for PM project channel. And that data is now the project data for the artificial intelligence project. I can tell sentiment analysis that whatever is happening in those posts is the communication that it should analyze to come up with a project sentiment score. So in this chart, what we're doing is AI is looking at those posts and it's saying, wow, of the project conversation that's happening, we have a downward trend in the sentiment or the positivity of the comments that are being made by the team. And we are also below the peer average score for all the project data set that's in the organization. So there's something wrong. And that might not be something that comes through in the cost health or the risk health or the schedule health. It might not be something that's surfacing in the data itself, but it might be some systemic issue that you need to start looking into about the way people feel about the project not really going that well. Maybe there's some risks hiding under the covers that people are really just kind of talking about but haven't made official. So, Mike, that's an example of how today we are able to leverage the data and the construct just by using Teams to create um, really incredible results from artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and like we said, this is just scratching the surface, right? This is really just getting started, and all the places we can go and customers can go with the data that's on the platform as well. Yeah, is somebody had asked if there's a roll-up view, so I didn't know if you were going to show maybe the project report that brings it all together as well.
Of course, yeah. So with just alongside, just using Teams, and it's really refreshing to tell people, you know what, I don't need to go find another project management tool. Let's just use Teams, because then you can put another tab next to the project schedule, and that's the project report. So all that data is now being aggregated together. All the data that you're generating about the project is coming through in a status report. And what Teams for PM does is it looks at the project schedule, the risks, the issues, the lessons learned, and it just puts it all together for you. So that manual status report that you're creating by chasing data around and aggregating it in a spreadsheet, or your reliance upon a third-party system that basically has the reporting, and that's that. You're able to create this Power BI report. This is the out-of-the-box version, and it's tailorable. So we can make this kind of look and feel the way that you need it to for your organization without a lot of heavy lift. And you can look at the risks, you can look at the issues and the lessons learned that are happening in the organization. But where is this data coming from? It's coming from these lists. So each channel has a series of RAID logs and lists that are optional in order for you to report and aggregate that information up. So here's the lessons learned log, the issues log, and the risk log. What's great about this is you're probably using Microsoft lists every day in some respect, and this is no different. But what Teams for PM does is it takes these lists and it creates a database out of these lists, or it leverages the existing database that's already in your environment. It's called the Dataverse, and it moves all this stuff in there so that you can look at it in reporting, and then it becomes part of your organizational data. So people are able to log risks and issues in the course of doing business and the flow of work. And Mike, when soon as we have that new capability available where it's just going to take the risks and issues right from the meeting, like
Yep.
transcript, not
Yep.
not from the minutes that you typed up, but from the transcript from the recording, right?
Right. That happens automatically. Exactly. That's a good
It's
point.
going to be
Yep.
amazing.
Yep. Yep.
Let
Somebody's
me.
asking about a dashboard. I guess you were getting there as well, right?
Oh, dashboard. Oh, yeah. Ask
Yeah,
and you
kind of the
shall
all-up
receive. Yeah.
dashboard. Yeah.
Right, of course. So this is not just at a project level, folks. So we can look at things all up. And remember when I was talking about there's different scheduler options, so planner, project for the web, and which is kind of a upgrade of planner with the timeline and the dependency management and other things. And then you have, if you guys are using traditional Microsoft Project too, we can pull that in too. Or Project Online, you have an existing Project Online deployment. And then people are starting to use Teams instead, but now you've got two things. Let's pull it in. Let's bring it in to the fold. And we can show you how to do that. But regardless of the three ways that you're managing the tasks and the projects, we can provide a consolidated dashboard. So now you can have all the different projects in your organization that are being run on those three different scheduling tools in one place and in Power BI. So now I'm able to drill down into that and I can see the different projects that are happening and their status. I can also see all of the issues, risks, and lessons learned that are happening across the organization and get a heat map of that. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, that's great. This is like read only, right? So it's an aggregation of all the risks in the company. That's terrific. But how do I edit that data centrally? Well, in the Teams for PM app, which is available to the PMO leadership or to people in leadership positions, you can actually edit all of this data about the projects centrally in one place. And then that'll go back to the channels, believe it or not.
Yeah. And so
And that
that's actually,
includes,
I'm sorry, Brian. That's an important thing to talk about. Like if you're even just using an existing one tool like Project Online, that'll enable you to do things like bulk data edits and things like that that you can't do in the tool natively, right? Because now we're bringing it into the Dataverse,
right.
and you can do interesting things with it, like bulk data. And some customers just want it for that, right? They're like, this is so killer. I need this for just to be able to do bulk edits of my metadata, my issues, my risk, et
Yeah.
cetera.
We have one customer that was using Project Online and we had implemented that a couple of years ago. And they liked it, but they really wanted the bulk edit feature. Well, we just rolled out Teams for PM just for that. I mean, and that's providing value on a day-to-day basis because now they can come in here and they can change the data in one place. Um, Again, if you're using an existing Project Online solution, you're going to start seeing that there's going to be a movement. If you guys are getting into Teams, there's going to be a movement away from those project team websites that were intended to provide collaboration and risk and issue tracking into people just wanting to use Teams because that's the way they want to work. So let's
Yep.
get that into here. And the way that looks, Mike, is basically this. So let's say that you had a project online environment
Mm-hmm.
and you wanted to pull it into Teams and you wanted it to be part of this data set that we're talking about so you could run AI off of that data. Um, this is what it looks like. So it's basically in that construct, just one more version of this tab. The
Mm-hmm.
report's the same. The project details are all here. Everything else is Teams. So everything else is being managed in a consistent way across whether this project is being managed in a good old Microsoft project and being synced to Project Online, or if it's using the new version of Project which is the project for the web version, or if you're using Planner, same thing, right? So this is the systems upgrade project, and this is Planner. But I was showing that dashboard before, and that's what I'm talking about. All three of those are going in here. And what's the next one we want to add, Mike?
The next one is going to be Azure DevOps, because I'm
Right.
going to cover that'll cover the last of the Microsoft work. And again, I say work because ADO is obviously, for those of you who know, that it's really not a project management tool. Just like I actually was chatting with somebody asking about Jira. Jira is also not technically a project management tool. It's really more of a work management tool in terms of software development, agile lifecycle. So Jira is on our roadmap as well to have it integrated. However, those even today we can bring the data in like to these data sets, just depending on what your requirements are. We can use the power apps and the 300 plus connectors and all those apps that you're talking about have connectors to them so we can bring the data in. What we don't have built in right now is the ability to create those sites, the team sites for a Jira initiative. Don't know if people want that yet or not. So maybe it's good enough just using the Power Apps that are available today. So that's a TBD kind of thing on
Yeah,
how
and
that's
you can
going to
see
function.
that we're just trying to create the spokes of the wheel here and pull the data into a central repository, and let the execution vary to a large extent tool wise. One thing I'll also want to mention is, this, you know, let's say that Mike and I have convinced you that that you should be using Teams for project management. That it's the right place to do it, that putting your collaboration first is really what you should be doing. If you just went and used Teams for project management without Teams for PM at the core of it, you would still have disconnected data. You would still have inability to report on everything all up. You would still have, people creating channels wherever they want and inability to find things, and you'd be chasing things around. So what Teams for PM creates is a governance construct to the use of Teams, and in the way that your organization intends to collect the data so that it can be meaningful. For example, you might have a common intake process, and that intake process is basically going to go through certain steps, certain approvals in order to create a project. Well, Teams for PM actually automates the creation of the channel once the project is approved, and it does it in the right place, provides the right permissions to everybody. So guess what? That construct that I'm talking about, that data collection construct, is there. And now we know that this channel is a Teams for PM created channel. So now we can say, okay, this is projectized work. We can now point AI at this work, and we can make heads or tails out of what's happening within this channel using all these data collection methods.
Right.
Otherwise, you'd be using whatever you want for the different tabs, and your data is going to be everywhere, and you're going to be back to square one.
Right. Did you have something else you want to cover? I have some other questions here. I was gonna. So
No,
somebody was
Mike, I'm
asking.
done with the demo. So
Okay. Well,
that's about
before
it.
you leave, can we have a
Okay.
glimpse into the resource management dashboard? Somebody was asking
Ah.
how we're handling that. So what we're doing there, and this is in beta, because we're working across different execution platforms. It's not resource
Hmm.
management like you would think about resource management within Microsoft Project Online. If you want to do that, you can still do it there. We have customers doing it all day, every day. We have people using Project for the Web and doing some resource management the way that it does it. What we're doing for our first take on resource management is abstracting that out a layer because we're not in the execution tools. We're actually creating the ability to do a resource planning component. So you can start a project, you can create phases for resources, you can create skills, and you can show those skills and those resources and the allocation across those for a planning purpose. In the future, we may start connecting them up as it's appropriate to the actual execution tools. But for now, what we're doing is just providing a planning capability. So you see there kind of you want to maybe do a real quick, and we're going to run out of time here, but you can see a heat map there, and you can also see the types
Well,
of projects
there's
that are
just
being
so
done.
much to talk about. It's hard to fit it into an hour, but this is what we're building. And I hear
Right.
this all the time. Like, people are just trying to make heads or tails out of resource management and trying to figure out how people are allocated, what percent they're allocated to certain projects, and do I have enough room to do that other project that I want to do? And
Right.
this is getting to that place.
Right. Right.
Now, what you can also do is you have a bunch of other ways that you can run resource management off of this data, learn from this data, and so as long as you're collecting it and then you're in the right place. For example, we can look at resource assignments, and we can look at that over the entire thing and do some analysis that way too.
Right. I think I'm going to take the share back for a second, Brian. Um, this is just a summary, and I think we'll blow through this real quickly. We don't need to talk about all this unless there's anything you wanted to highlight because we only have 3 or 4 minutes left. But this kind of tells about what Brian was just showing, what we're doing with Teams for PM, and kind of how it works. What we have, you can contact us. All our contact information is available at teamsforpm.com or innovative.com. With that, is there any other questions? Are you seeing any questions we want to try to answer real quick in the
Yeah,
chat? Let's
I
see.
think there's a couple of questions out here, Mike. We have the 3 minutes, and says, so Robert would like to know, how technical do I have to be in order to connect the Power Apps? I'm a functional project manager and focus on clients' requirements. I tend to use Excel and Smartsheet.
Um, that's a little bit of a tough question. It's not hard to use the Power Apps at a basic level, but they've actually changed that kind of how Microsoft is talking about it from low code no code to low code pro code. What they're recommending is if you want to do things like integrations, which you would probably want to involve your development team or some people with some Power Apps, deeper understanding of the data constructs and things like that. We do see people who can get a little bit of basic workflow and things going, and then they start to pigeonhole themselves, and they need some deeper level of expertise. So it's easier, it's faster to develop, but you still can get yourself into trouble pretty quickly and frustrated if you're not careful. So I hope that helps, Robert.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Another person, unknown user, is asking, what are your next steps? And I would say reach out. We can do a customized demo for you and your team. We can talk about what it would take to get Teams for PM running in your environment. So reach out to us. We're available at teamsforpm.com. There's a contact us form there, and that would be a great way to start that conversation.
A couple people are asking about PDUs. We don't give PDUs per se, but you can claim them in your self-directed education. I'm still a PMP, so I do it every 3 years. So you can go claim the hour as part of your self-directed education and put the name and title of this in there, and it'll credit you. All right. Anything else? We may have actually gotten all
Another
this in.
unknown user, anonymous user, is asking if we're going to do this again. We have a webinar series, so watch out for our upcoming webinars. We'll be publicizing those on our website as well as via email. But if you have other folks in your organization that are really interested in learning concepts that we covered today, feel free to share the recording that we'll provide via email as a result of you being on the list. And then if you would like a customized demo for your organization, we can definitely arrange that as well. So everything is on www.teams4pm.com.
Right. And there it is right there, www.teamsforpm.com. And Pamela will also share her contact information when she sends the update out that has the link to the recording as well. So, all right. Well, is there anything else? And there's Brian sharing his information in the chat thread as well. Really appreciate everybody coming. It was a great turnout. I think we had almost 300 people here, so that was awesome. And you guys stay in touch. We love having these conversations. It was great a couple weeks ago at PMI Global. Lots of really good conversations, a lot of excitement over what's going on in the world of project management and technology. So we're here to help. Thanks, Brian.
It's a great time to be a project manager, folks.
It really is.
Thank you for attending our webinar, and have a great day.
Thanks. Take care, everybody.